Hello, my name is Lexi, and this is technically my first video of me just sitting and talking, so bear with me. I recently got baptized, and a lot of my friends were wondering why, so maybe they'll watch this video, but I decided to explain it for everyone, and I realized in that it's just I have to give my testimony on why I made this decision. So I made a list, but I'm gonna touch on everything basically like for a good 5 minutes, explain what I need to explain. I think that humans are very complex people, and I think it's hard to give a very brief answer. So I'm just going to do it in here so people can just hear me yap whenever they feel like they want to hear me out. So I'm going to go ahead and start. This is my first video ever, so I plan on continuing this. So God willing, this my faith keeps me going and keeps me motivated, and it will. But I just know myself. I just know how I get when I do something for the first time. So yeah, thanks for listening. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So yeah, thank you again. Okay, I'm trying to convince myself that I'm talking to somebody, because right now I feel like imposter syndrome because I'm just talking to myself. So I'm gonna pretend you're a person. Well, you are a person, but you know what I mean. So I had filmed this already. I was actually in my car, but I had so many things to do that day, and I just didn't like the layout. I was going through my life through I'm 26, so I was going through my years. I was just trying to chop it up to elementary, junior high, but I think that's a little too much for a first video like this, a testimony. So I ended up making a mini outline. So if I'm looking down, I'm looking at the outline. So I have 6 points, and I'm just gonna go in on them about 5 minutes each, so I don't take too much time. I'll be able to get all my points across without oversharing or overcomplicating things. Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and start. Okay, so the first point I want to talk about on how I even got to this place in my life. I was burdened with a lot of fear when I was little. Since I was little, I mean. So ever since I was little, seriously, as long as I could remember, I had really intense night terrors, sleep paralysis. I couldn't even move. I would cry in my pillow because I was literally being suffocated by, I just couldn't move or anything. Couldn't get anything to move at all. It was crazy. And that happened for ever. It just came and went, and I would just stay up and I would stare at the dark spaces in my room, and I would just I would have really awful paranoid thoughts. So that's another thing. My paranoia was over the hill. It was insane. I wasn't really ever fascinated with scary movies at a young age. But when you're young in the 2000s, there was always creepy YouTube was obviously still a big thing, but I think it was a lot of urban legends and all this stuff fascinated me. But I knew it was gonna scare the crap out of me. I always tried to stay away, but I just always had this lingering paranoia. So whenever I did get invested into darker theme things. Or I remember like the first time I watched a scary movie willingly, I was like freaking out like the entire like night. Like I had to prepare myself like that I was gonna be like up all night. And then it just kind of translated into like, that was just like stuff that happens like when I'm alone or like at nighttime. Like I did not like going to the bathroom alone. I hated it. I hated closing the door. I hated being in a room by myself. Like it was bad. I'm explaining it because this happened from when I was little to like, this literally stopped like, I think last year. So, but then like, you know, my other like point that's like under like, you know, the fear one is I had terrible anxiety. When I was little, I would like sit and like I would freak out. I understood like the idea of an afterlife when I was little because I was like introduced to like Catholic and Christian themes, or not themes, but like just the teachings. And I would have crippling anxiety about like just some of the things, like just, or even just like I'm scared to mess up, or like just honestly a really crazy, like I kind of had like an early life crisis. Like I would just be really young and I would freak out thinking like I'm gonna make a mistake in the future, like, you know, because like I think something that people don't talk about is like you know, like this idea of like predestination that they teach in I think I might get this wrong, but I think it's in Catholicism, and at some point like just other like different like earlier teachings, like they would teach that, you know, it's already been figured out. So whatever you do, like, you know, if you're already gonna go down, like it doesn't matter. So I would kind of freak out about those things, or I would just get really overwhelmed. I'll ask lots of questions about people, like it was a lot. It was a lot of overwhelming ideas that I had at such a young age. I was probably like, I remember being like 5 years old, like losing it, like spiraling over really big ideas. Even like thinking about space. So a lot of anxiety, paranoia, night terrors were just, I think, a really big one. And like I said, I feel like that just kind of translated into anxiety as I got older. But I still had night terrors, sleep paralysis when I got older. So that was a big one. And I'm just gonna list out all the points, and then I'll just, you know, give my conclusion on how I'm doing with all these things. So now I'm gonna talk about my second bullet point is repression. So I think when I think when I was younger, I experienced like a lot of repression. So like, you know, I didn't know at the time, but like spiritually, and emotionally, and I think I could say physically in a way, because I dealt with a lot of insecurity when I was younger. Too early of an age. Like I was like crying about like my self-image in like the 4th grade. Sorry, that was my lizard. I would cry about being too small, not looking old enough, like not maturing pretty quickly. And it really affected me because like you could just see like the culture moving already, like in elementary school. Like boys clearly gave attention to certain girls, and if you just didn't look like that, like you kind of were nobody. So that really affected me. And I remember just like crying my eyes out to my mom, and everyone just kind of moved quick. Like they moved pretty fast, and that like made me feel like the weirdo, that made me feel awkward. So that was a big one. And I was also just I think we can all like say that we've been like bullied by, you know, older cousins, like older family members. I can't really say I got bullied at school. I've been like picked on here and there, and even like I myself, like out of like being vengeful or just like hateful, like I've, you know, been like a bystander. I've been like adding on to like being mean to like a specific person. But I think when I was like I said, pretty young still, little kid, like I just was around like a lot of boy cousins like on one side of my family, so they would all kind of just like gang up on me, or they would like, it's funny because they would include me, but I would be like the target if we're like playing like a shooting game, for example, or like, you know, all those like fake like weapons and like rubber bullets and stuff. Just like an example, but it did affect me. Like, you know, I had a great childhood, and like I see like the positive side of it, so it's nothing like to feel bad about. Like, I think I hate to say it, but like it was kind of character building. You know, I don't think doing it to a kid is okay, but you know what I mean. So you know, I was called names, and I think it was like I said, like building up my tolerance for people being mean to me, I think, because I never defended myself. And that's not me saying you shouldn't, but now I do, but you know, in a mature way. I don't think it's right to be mean back to people. And obviously when I was that age, I would try that here and there, and I knew it just wasn't the right way to go about things. But you know, I was the first child, so I was definitely like the guinea pig, and my parents are amazing. And I'm just gonna say that everyone can agree, like with you know, Mexican families, even like whitewashed Mexican families, like your upbringing is like, you know, there's not this, you know, I think mental illnesses, or you know, just affecting somebody mentally and emotionally, like wasn't really like a said thing. Like it's a common thing. Like gentle parenting wasn't a thing, and there was obviously gentleness, but I think there's a lot of like, you know, I think with like Mexican culture, there's a lot of like interrogation tactics. So I think that kind of stressed me out a lot, and that also kind of leaps into the anxiety part. But then it's like when you express like acknowledging anxiety, it's like, you know, Mexican culture is like, that doesn't exist. Like, you know, I don't know. And like I said, like, you know, I'm not villainizing anyone. I'm just explaining because I can explain things. So yeah, I feel like I was just a pretty quiet. Like I didn't really have I can't really say like there was a lot of ambition. I would always start these projects at home. Oh, I spit. I always started these projects at home. I would like make my own little world with like my toys in my room. But I noticed a pattern already. Like I just didn't have like the capacity, just the ambition to like finish or follow through like with my projects. I remember like I literally tried selling like bows at school one time, and I got so nervous, like all these people wanted it. Like I literally like backed out, and I like didn't make them. And that's just an example. Yeah, so that was like, that all like started, you know, when I was younger. So yeah, that was one. That's what I feel like a lot of my repression like kind of came in and started, and like stayed for a very long time throughout like my, you know, high school 20s. Okay, the next one on my list is, I just titled it partying because I love a good party. I started drinking after my first relationship, which we'll get into later. But I started drinking at like 18. So like the summer when I was 18, like I went all out. The repression thing will come back in later, because I think that's why I like just catapulted so hard with partying. I just, yeah, I mean, I never drank before that, so I just, when I drank, I pretty much drank. And then I remember literally like a year later, I started like, I didn't realize you could vomit from like drinking. I was like, oh, what is happening to me? You know, but that didn't stop me. So I drank pretty hard. And once I turned 21, like I turned 21 during COVID. So like it was kind of weird. But I mean, there was certain times where I realized like I can't drink that much. But I definitely made it work. Like I would go to like the club, and I would spend like $80 on like drinks for myself. And I definitely didn't really know what a limit was. But I kind of did. So like there was times where I'd be like, okay, I gotta chill out. But then towards the end of like my drinking, like not drinking, but my getting drunk career, there was a few times where I started blacking out. So now I'm probably like 23 or maybe even 20. I had like my first blackout experience and it was so scary. But I'll talk about that later. I also started experimenting with drugs. So sorry to my family members that watch this, but I did. So that happened, people try to argue it, but like weed is a psychedelic. I literally know. I think the only drug I was really around was like mainly weed, like all the time, because I had like, I went to college and I had friends that had it. My first boyfriend like had it, and like we would like do it together. Smoke it together, and I'll talk about that later. Like I said, I'll talk about that part later. But yeah, I was experimenting, like, at some point, like I would just, in the future, like I had more relationships, or I just was going out more. So I was introduced to more things, or I was curious about more different types of drugs. And I definitely like have tried, and I thank God, like I don't, I didn't, become addicted to that specifically. I actually got pretty scared out of it pretty fast. So I'll talk about that later. But it's funny because I put this under partying, but I realized like with psychedelics, like, and I'll probably talk about this in a different video, but I was like opening doors. So like when I was like experimenting, or even when I just like, I swear, like when there's been like too many times in my life where like I took an edible and like I literally saw so much, and I was just like, people wouldn't believe me. They'd be like, you're just tripping. I'm like, I'm not. Like I saw these things, like I'm not making this up. And they're kind of just like, it's just weed. And I'm like, dude, like I maybe have a big brain. I don't know what, but doors would open, or I would see so much. And I'll get into detail on that later, but I can never call myself like a former witch. I can never say like I was fascinated with the occult, yet I found myself like literally being possessed by the music I listened to. And I remember one time finding myself like a couple years back, like literally in like a setting with some friends on drugs, doing a tarot card reading on my friend, and literally doing tarot card readings like a few times throughout my life, but then like literally just getting the worst of the worst, like if you want to call it bad luck, like after just opening a door of just like unfortunate, weird events, very chaotic. I was just inviting so much chaos into my life, and I didn't realize it. I just kind of I was so closed-minded. I was just like, what's happening? Yeah, so it's funny because I guess I never like acknowledged. I remember being fascinated with the idea of becoming a witch. I remember being like, oh, that'd be so cool, or like, because it's so, it's so popular, and like it feels like very empowering to a girl. And then, watching all these movies, like, oh, it's so cool, like, but yeah, I'll talk about that more later. But that was just the end point of my partying. Like my partying, I didn't realize wasn't partying anymore. It's actually like I was doing a lot of like spiritual things to myself, and negatively hurting, and negatively impacting my life, hurting myself and people around me. But yeah, my next point is my love life. So my first relationship was not the best segue into like dating. My first relationship was unfortunately super like emotionally abusive, extremely manipulative, and then at some point it just, it also kind of falls into like that category of repression that I was talking about. So much was already like, I was already repressed by so much, like I just guess was kind of used to it. So I didn't really know better. I didn't have that self-respect. And at some point, like, people could try to, like, you know, it's not that no one told me about self-respect. Like, I clearly had figures that had self-respect and people talked to me about self-respect, but I don't know, it's just so deep in, like, nailed in. Like, I just didn't get it. It didn't click. I didn't know. I was like 14. So, that lasted for like, gosh, till I was like 19. I'll do another video about that. But basically, like, that also comes into, like, at a, like I said, an early age, because no one should be like that age, like, dealing with this stuff. But, you know, I think these things happen. That's why I talk about it. Lust, you know, just sexual addiction, immorality at a very young age. And it honestly took over my life. Like, there would be days, like, it was just all I thought about, and it's awful, but, like, I would be in church, like, just thinking about it. Like, don't even care what's going on. Like, I just want to think about this. And then it's funny because at some points, like, when I felt like I needed more, I would just, you know, at some point you get tired, but it's like you can take both routes. Like, either, like, you keep going, or you know, realize that this doesn't matter. But I just didn't care. I also, like, this also kind of comes in with, like, the witchcraft thing. But I would also, like, manifest, like, boys, like, back into my life. Like, I would, like, focus very hard and try to get them back. And it was the most unhealthiest thing I think I've ever done. I have at least, no, I do. I have five ex-boyfriends. So, and it's funny because I'll talk about that later. 'Cause I read something recently and it's just funny. But I would victimize myself pretty well. I would just acknowledge all the things they did to me. And I felt in my heart at the time, like, oh, well, you did this to me. So in all fairness, like, I do this back to you. So I would do, like, very malicious things, like, especially if they would hurt me really bad, like, break my heart, and, like, it would really bruise my ego, it would hurt my feelings. I literally would plan out, like, in the future, like, oh, I need to, like, get them back somehow. If they ever come back into my life, that'll be my opportunity to get them back, tell them how I feel about them. And it would happen. Like, it would work out. I thank God now, like, I ended up having a full circle moment with basically all of them. And I was able to, like, sit and apologize and really explain, like, I'm terribly sorry I did this to you. But I'll talk about that later, because right now we're still, like, the bad stuff, you know. So that's, like, you know, I'm going a little ahead. So, love life too, I guess I could include, like, relationships, like, my family. Like, me and my mom have had a awful relationship because it's just, like, two bulls just fighting. It was intense, and the entire house felt it. So I feel like I was just trying to get love from these boys that didn't even really know themselves yet. I didn't even know myself yet. And I'm over here, like, just all the anger I'm getting from not getting this, I'm taking it to my house, and I'm just, like, everyone, like, I'm like a dragon, like, just breathing fire. Like, just everyone's getting burnt. Like, it was really intense, really sad, unfortunate. I thank God I'm not there anymore. But that was my love life. So now I'm gonna move on. Try and debate which 2 points to talk about first. I have 2 more points, so I guess talk about this one. At some point, a lot of it's also like a parable that I'm barely kind of picking up on recently. It's like a veil removal. So I think since I was a quiet kid, I think I was a quiet kid. Like, maybe people are like, no, you weren't, but I guess I was, like, selectively quiet. And then, you know, it's like you're around your friends and you talk more. But if you're, like, in a setting where, like, you don't know what's going on, like, you're quiet and you're respectful. You don't want to piss anyone off. I feel like that was kind of like, I guess that was the vibe for me. But in always being observant, like, I tell my friend this, like, when we sit and talk, like, I feel like when I'm a fly on the wall, like, I just kind of, like, recognize social interaction patterns and, like, the way people talk to each other, and like just it's like kind of like you realize like there's nothing new under the sun. And that's like funny because like that's biblical. Like I never knew like all these things were biblical at some point. We'll talk about it later. But yeah, like I just noticed a lot of interactions, and I noticed a lot of people like there's kind of just like nothing in their eyes. And I always noticed that. I remember there was a point in time where like I tried to numb myself because I would get overwhelmed by just knowing that some people just won't like turn on the lights in their mind. And then I realized there was like a ripple effect, which is why like, you know, it starts as small as like elementary school bullying, and then it gets as high as like, you know, government officials taking, you know, oh, sorry. Could be something as big scale as government officials, people in power, this fact that no one wants to solve world hunger. You know, it's like, how does anyone get done? How does anything get done? Like with all these things. And I felt a huge weight, and I just was convinced that I was just like an ant in all of this. But I also knew in the back of my head, like I tried convincing myself, I tried convincing myself that like that was my place and I just stay there, but then it just didn't feel right. So I think there was like a veil removal slowly over time. Like I think people need to understand these things don't just happen like that. Some things do, but I think, like I said, humans are just so complex. Like people are just so, there's just more than just like, a 180 switch up. Like there's just a lot of things that you just have to unpack over time, and you get information every day. So it's like, I think that's like also my argument with it. Sorry, I do not like how my hair looks right now. Whatever. So I also started noticing, especially these patterns of like these toxic patterns I had within myself, like with interacting with people, especially like boys that I loved at the time. And not saying that I didn't love them, but like I had a love, but I didn't have a mature version of love. So I was wondering why things just kept happening in the way they did. So I noticed like a big thing was like I started feeling a conviction. So it's just like when you notice like, oh, like, you know, what you did like was messed up. Like, you know, oh, maybe you shouldn't have done that. Maybe you could have said that better. Like, you know, just that conscience, instead of being like, no, I didn't really do anything wrong. Or like just trying to justify it. Like conviction is like you're clearly conscious about what you're doing when you're doing something that's kind of, that's messed up, or it's just straight wrong. Because there's a certain moral code to how you treat people or interact. So that started just echoing more and more and more. And then I would kind of like dive to the past. My mind would kind of dive to the past, and I would realize things from a long time ago that was like, I would just pardon myself with. I'd be like, nah, that's fine. Like, you know, that was okay. Or like, I would let my friends justify like wrongdoings because like, oh, like, you know, you're such a nice person. Like, it's fine. You did that. It's like, no, that's not how this works. So I would also recognize spiritual attacks. And that comes back to like when I was abusing like alcohol and weed, like when you just alter your persona, like you're a different person. Or these anxiety attacks. Like my anxiety attacks would, at some point they got really bad. And I had at least like 3 really intense, awful, bad highs that are just like ingrained. Like I just remember exactly what I saw. Like it's like these crazy like visuals, and especially feelings like in your sleep, like sleep paralysis. And I remember like my dad, when I was just talking about sleep paralysis casually, because my best friend in college, my roommate, had sleep paralysis too. And my dad one time just looked me straight in the eyes and was like, that's a demon attack. And I'd be like, you know, I just didn't get it. Nothing really clocked. Like it made me think it was definitely a seed planted, but I didn't realize all these negative things are not normal, and there's actually something going on. So I started kind of like my gears started shifting over time, with especially all these things like in just media and social media, like just so much, there's just too much, and it felt too obvious at some point, like marketing schemes, big deals, like just the way like the world was already turning. I was like, there's just something weird, and like it's like, does anyone see this? Like, you know? So that was happening maybe like, I would say at a pretty young age. In high school, I was pretty fed up. I was pretty annoyed with everybody. I was like, I want to be out of here. I even did that in elementary. Like at some point, I just got fed up, and I was like, there has to be more. But I gotta head out. So, dang it. Well, now my hair's fixed, so sorry if my hair's messed up the video before. The last one I'm gonna talk about, because I have to go to work, is creativity. So, for creativity, I always had a desire for it when I was little, but I just didn't take it seriously because no one else took it seriously, I guess. Like I would hear like really nice compliments from my family, but I just didn't really like understand how it could turn into a career or like even like a meaningful purpose. Like I said, because I was constantly repressed and kind of plagued by all these like things I just spoke about. Like there was just so much going on, and I just kept like, whether it was like external or internal, like just trouble was being caused. Like it was a lot. And I didn't take it as trouble. I kind of thought like, well, I guess this is my life. Like, I don't know. We prevail, I guess. So, but I always had this desire to need to help people that felt just as stuck as me. So at one point this year, I felt extremely stuck, like towards the beginning of the year. I won't go into detail right now what it was. I will soon, but I felt absolutely stuck and I didn't know what to do. So I remember just praying about it. Because I tried to get myself out of it and it just wasn't happening. But I had the desire. I was like, I want this so bad. I just want to head out. I'm over this. And I was just over like the things like I physically wanted to do. I knew mentally my mind was just somewhere else. I knew this was not the place I needed to be in. Like these patterns that I was just putting myself in. So yeah, honestly, I will be so for real and, you know, take it as it is. Like Jesus did rescue my soul that was exhausted. Like I was tired. I didn't really bring this up, but yeah, I definitely throughout time, like in my, throughout my relationships, like I wanted to end my life and like I knew it, I couldn't do it. And it made me feel weak in a way. Cause I was like, I can't even follow through. Like I feel this way. I can't even follow through. And, you know, I thank God that, you know, I never felt like I was capable of following through. But yeah, like ever since that moment that I did that, ever since I just was like, I can't do this, basically a surrender. And I think a lot of people will talk about it one day. I think people see surrender as something very negative, but it's like I was blocking myself from like this, from this source that's meant for me and is meant for me to like have purpose for something that's way beyond me. Like even just thinking about it, like just think about you're meant to serve something that is beyond you. And I think that's what everyone desires. I think that's what I realized that's what I was searching for the entire time. As I was going through life, when I got older. So yeah, I mean, to sum it all up, like I pray about everything, and I was just the fear, night terrors. I don't have them anymore. That doesn't mean I don't get visited, and I'll talk about that. But I just don't have that fear anymore. Not the same way I did before. Repression, my confidence has been building. Has been building like some Lego bricks, like for sure. And that's something we'll talk about, like I said. But it is definitely nowhere near to where I feel like I'm silenced. It's definitely nowhere near to where I feel like I need somebody to be with me, or I need somebody to help me. Like partying, I don't, like I said, I'll talk about all these points in separate videos at some point. But I definitely am the most sober-minded I've been in my life, and I'm very happy about it. I love me a glass of wine for celebratory reasons. I don't need to play with any spirits, even if I know or don't know it anymore. So only one. There's literally, and I think it's so convenient. There's only one spirit that is for you, which is like the Holy Spirit. And love life, I'm alone and I love it. And I've never felt so at peace just being by myself and learning to be by myself and just loving my Christ identity. It feels so great. I never thought I'd get to this point. I'm very grateful. I feel extremely blessed. And it's nice to not feel like, don't get me wrong, because sometimes I get scared. You know, people get married around me, people start their families. I think like, you know, I feel awkward in this position where I'm not. But I think it's nice to be able to give it to giving a worry to like your father is like everything. Like it makes you feel better. We could talk more about it too soon. The veil is definitely removed, and the veil being removed, sometimes you're kind of just like, oh, wait, why? But I'd rather have it be removed than pretend like I don't know nothing, you know. I'm grateful and blessed that I get to see everything for what it is, or, you know, just have like a open mind, willing to listen, willing to be patient, willing to observe and see things for the way they really are, you know, wanting to dissect the truth, figure out what it is. And I think that builds, I remember like after I kind of got over some hurdles, like during the summertime, I was desiring wisdom. I felt dumb at some point. I know I'm not, but I was just craving, like, I remember praying for wisdom over and over and over. And then I ended up like, I had a Bible in my hand and I got the answer I wanted. Sorry, my hair is bugging me. I got the answer I wanted, and I just been receiving wisdom. Like, I swear every time I open the Bible, like I learned something new every single time. It is like somehow like there's like an ending to the physical book, but there's just like, there's so much you can learn. So that got answered for me. Yeah. And then the last point, creativity. I didn't realize like my creativity was a gift. Like I never saw it that way. So I'm very grateful I see it that way. I had to jump through, I thought I myself had to jump through these hurdles of like imposter syndrome, which we'll talk about soon. But I didn't. I really just kind of prayed it out. Seeking wisdom, I think, is like a really like, it gives you so much clarity. And I think more than ever, like I don't have to trust my own thoughts. I don't have to trust my own judgment, because that kind of leads me to like being paralyzed or just getting frustrated and then giving up. So I feel better. So I feel great. There's obviously times where like, this doesn't mean that, the last thing I'll say before I end the video is like, this doesn't mean that like my life's going to be amazing. I think the point is like, your life still seems amazing, even in like really terrible situations. I hate to say it. I'm sorry. I'm getting sweaty. Yeah, I think it's like, you know, the parable of like being calm during a storm. It's just like this, I think it's something that everyone should strive to achieve. I think it's unrealistic to be pissed off that like there's a storm. It's like, we all know these things happen. And I think it's just a sense of like high horse you got to get off of. So I'm glad I got off mine. I was definitely on a real good high horse for a very long time. So yeah, very last minute, but it's like something that I didn't include, but I think it's super important to say, cause it's gonna be brought up at some point. I don't know where I'm gonna put this in like out of the categories, cause it kind of falls into a few. But when I was younger, like I knew I didn't look like super feminine. Like just my features, I just didn't look like a, you know, not that like a boy, but like I just knew like I didn't look like the standard of like a pretty little girl, I guess. So that kind of like sat with me, like, you know, I literally didn't care until like other people started like imposing their like comments on me, especially with like being too small or just not being like, you know, not looking like a woman yet at like 11. But yeah, there were definitely seeds planted, like on the other side, like just, I mean, negatively. So yeah, I just had to mention that. Yeah, so when I was like in college, for a second take, just in case I don't like the first one, yeah, I did identify as queer for like a solid amount of my 20s, probably until like recently. Yeah, probably until like before the year began. So yeah, I just needed to put that out there. I no longer do. I'll talk about that soon. So yes, if you made it to here, I'm so happy you did. This was a little intense and new for me, but I thank you for listening. If you're able to subscribe and, you know, have the notification button on, I'm probably going to keep talking about these things whether people listen or not. So perhaps a podcast talking about all these things. So yeah, thank you for listening to my testimony, and have a wonderful day, and God bless your soul.